work that brings these people together in different spaces, both digital and physical, although some would argue that there's kind of a slippage and that doesn't even exist anymore. So I'm really curious, how has that changed for you? How has understanding emotionality, how it is materialized through the works that you're making, both in kind of configurations, reconfigurations of like human bodies, non-human bodies, or maybe even Tiare, in your case, I'm thinking about like organisms. How does that how does self-isolating but making work that actually, you know, brings people together to think about these really, you know, deep emotive ideas change for you in this time that we're kind of living in right now? I think Carla Gann has to say something. I'm just joking.
Okay, I'll launch in. I'm just spitballing here because I'm like, brain, keep up with, yeah. So one thing in terms of self-isolating, something that I've already mentioned is that I actually haven't experienced the great pause. So I've been really busy. So I've been getting involved at my institution on various efforts to kind of address what we're all dealing with right now. And I've been part of this PSA and some other various committees. And that's to me in terms of, I mean, I've done that work before, but in terms of, I just finished spending a lot of time isolated prior to our isolating, because I'm the show that premiered at Clark's Gallery, Telematic, and I spent all of these months isolated other than teaching, you know, and I was so looking forward to getting out and seeing people again, and then realize, oh, now it's a continuum, but everyone's sharing it with me, you know. So I had already kind of been working in that space for several months just because I, you know, was completing a pretty enormous body of work. But the one piece that I produced for Well Now What the Fuck was actually a rather kind of emotional response to this event, in that I just spent several months all of these taxonomies and these categories for, you know, tons of objects that I'd retrieved from the internet. And for the video I made for Well Now What the Fuck, it's basically all those objects just rain down from the sky, and there is no classification anymore. And it embodies for me this fear, you know, of like there's no order, right? And all of it is just raining down. So I'll let someone else continue.
I was gonna say something similar, kind of tangential, but self-isolation for me, um, I have been in odd self-isolation for the past year, and circumstances. But it's interesting how, because a lot of my work is always, it's happening here in the space in domesticity, in also talking to other people, collaborations, and my collaborations reach beyond humans. Oftentimes it would be wandering out and talking to a rock, talking to a stream of water, and seeing, hopefully hearing something emerge, and two entities kind of meeting, and but then still my body being the point of contact. And so in that regards, I think the whole isolation part has enhanced a lot of these kind of sensitivities, like, I'm gonna say it, like tingling spidey senses or something like that. And it's heightened a lot of awareness, and just noticing of things that have been always there but haven't really, that I didn't pay attention to. And it comes from also slowing down, less people outside, more animals, creatures, nature, and things to learn from outside. And so that in itself has helped me kind of move beyond. And the crowd for me, it's not just crowd that to space, but a crowd and a shared future that could be with both things that are just not even living or non-living, like binary like that, but even objects and things. And that has been accentuating even more being in my room, in my house, because I started realizing, I don't know if any of you do it, but like, frying, something on the pan and thinking about, oh my gosh, that pan it must hurt, or projecting emotion or some sort of kind of like my very anthropocentric vision and touch feel to it. And that has been something that's been growing, I think, throughout this time. And I don't know if this is the right interpretation, but onlyness is, I don't know, that's an interesting term, and I'll have to think about it a little bit more. But yeah, I think that's where I'm at.
I just have to say really quickly, I haven't been cleaning my house, and my excuses for that is the dust bunnies, because I have a whole narrative going on with my dust bunnies right now. So yeah, I get you.
Well, to Laura's point, I really love this idea of that you touched upon, because well, anyway, it's some Ursula K. Le Guin stuff that you touched upon. We can dig into that, but Clark, Tiare, how are you feeling about anything that I touched upon? Again, what I read from Seth's essay had, again, it's like Canetti's reflection on kind of this idea of being forced into our homes, or I should say mandated into our homes out of fear of the unknown, this virus. But, so many people experience so many different kinds of permutations of fear for different things. So Clark and Tiare, like, what about you? What does onlyness mean, or security, or how are you two feeling about this?
Well, I was picking up, and maybe for Tiare too, because right, Tiare, you have a curatorial practice also. And what my niece asked me, sort of as part of a family chat, what are you going to do when the quarantine is lifted? And my first thought is, I'm going to have a big party, and I'm going to get together with all the people who I haven't been able to hang out with. And then I thought about it again. I thought, I'm going to have an art show. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I was imagining. And it makes me realize how important, right, the show, as much, I have to say, and let me make a nod to Wade and Faith and Lorna, and I really am enjoying all the online programming, and this show in particular has been a great way to stay connected to people. But it reminds me of how important that is to me, and how important that is to an exhibition, the gathering in space, the being physically present to the work, and also in that vein, thinking about the crowd. I'm usually wary of crowds, but one of the things that I miss the most and recognized most immediately is that what I miss is sort of the city in general, sort of the city as a whole. And I think what I mean is all those kind of little, so, I'm sort of isolated most of the time anyway. And, all those little exchanges, like with the buying the cup of coffee or getting off the bus or whatever it is, it's like I miss those. Like I've got a tactile kind of wanting for, like, hi, so anyway. And there's been some of that too. People seem almost more sensitive to it on the street. So it's like, hi, I see you, a chance to socialize,
Yeah, I really resonate with everything everyone has said. And for me, it's been an interesting transition, because I was traveling a lot and in very social environments, physical social environments, right before the lockdown. I was in Stuttgart, Berlin, and then New York, kind of involved in a lot of social gatherings around art, conversations, meeting new people, kind of hustling on both airplanes and trains to get to these different locations of people to physically meet and talk for like a month straight almost. And then I moved into this space. Oh, and I also, as Clark mentioned, I have a curatorial practice in addition to my art practice that's at Babe Lab Gallery, that's about bringing communities together in person to have conversations and to showcase works and talk about the works. So right when I got back from New York, we had 2 events at my space, literally the same week as lockdown. So there was like small crowds coming through, and it was kind of like this tension in the air that led like this isolation. And it was a lot of feelings for me. It was like very heavily social to very isolated. Luckily, I'm in a space with some beautiful humans and plants that I have been connecting with, and you know, it's really deepening those connections to the people who I see every day, and deepening those connections to like food I'm eating. I'm cooking every meal pretty much. My plants are like thriving. I've been watering them. They have way more attention now than they used to. You know what I mean? And realizing that almost when you're an arts practitioner, kind of hustling around as we do, both online and offline, we kind of ignore these, what's immediately around us. And I was ignoring a lot of things, as Laura was saying, you know, and I've gotten to really deepen my immediate environment, which is my plants, my roommates, my walls. I wanted to bring up The Brave Little Toaster. I don't know if you guys remember that movie from the 80s. But like, I literally, when I was a kid, believed that there was like life in every non-animate object. And I used to like talk to the walls, like think my pillow was alive, things like that. So it's like going a little bit back to that now. But yeah, I really appreciate this time that I'm having to kind of really pay attention to the small details in the immediate environment and not have so many distractions where I have to rush off to a meeting or, you know, yeah.
Thank you, Tiara. Thank you. I mean, gosh, this is there's so much. I have like 9 million questions for everyone. But I think what I will go back to is what Tiara and Laura, you were talking about, that there's an aliveness that kind of starts to, I'm also TAing for a film class, and we just finished watching Blade Runner. But and the question was actually like, let's just get into it. The question that the professor asked was about like this liveliness of the replicants. I'm not sure how many people have seen Blade Runner, but and then and then we also have Carla Gann here. So out of respect for Carla Gann, I also just want to bring up the notion of liveliness. But I instantaneously thought of like Ursula K. Le Guin's work when, Laura, you were bringing up like, oh, the pan has life, like there's and I mean, down to like the molecular structure of things, like technically we're all made of the same things, just different configurations, right? But since we're talking about what it means to be emotional,
the whole
I wanted
bunch
to
of you
bring up
gotta
really
have a
quickly
combined
and then kind of like
wattage
lead
of
into this
5,
next
maybe.
question. There's this one time I went to a panel in the Bay Area in San Francisco, and there's a really contentious kind of relationship that people have with tech, obviously, with kind of the abstraction that is the Silicon Valley, not just as an area, but like also mythology. And this one person in the crowd it just really stuck with me. She said, there's nothing magical about technology there's nothing magical that can be made with technology, like digital technology. What's magical about that? And my heart like sank, because I think also as someone who like participating in new media and digital practices in like a wide variety of ways. And so I'm very curious, how has this concept of how emotion is mediated through technology, digital, even if you want to bring up analog, feel free. How has, for each of your practices, curatorial and or artistic, have been mediated? Like, emotions really digging into the feels here. You know what I mean?
I want someone else to start.
Again, blinking. You want to say something?
Oh, she blinked. I think part of your question kind of got distorted, and so towards the end, but to talk about the relationship of emotion and the work that I'm currently dedicated to. Well, part of it is in 2017, I was working on a whole project called Synthetic Empathic Intelligent Companion Artifacts, Human Interaction Labs, which was a speculative transmedia narrative 12 persona project that was crazy. But from there on, part of my interest with emotion or affective computing or synthetic companions stemmed from reading about Paro, the little baby harpsichord robot that's supposed to give you therapeutic support for elderly people. And reading about that in Sherry Turkle's Alone Together, I was very skeptical. And then after going to Japan and meeting it in contact physically, petting it, and realizing that there's more to it than just machine and meaty body. And that kind of point of contact just kind of changed everything for me. And that's when I started thinking about, there's something more than just body to body, physicality to physicality. There's something there in between that I can't language. I don't know what it is, but it's there. And I realized also then working with Surbi Saraf Center for Emotional Materiality, and which we're going to have a whole panel on May 13th. It just that kind of like conversation around realizing that there's limitations to language and how machines are trained to reconfigure and predict and match and quantify the way we feel just doesn't make sense to me yet. I've yet to be convinced. And part of that has been feeding a lot into my work. And so whether it's even playfully, humorously engaging with technological objects like foam rolling with Alexa, which is a piece I did this year with heavy breathing, let's see if some sort of, if we could figure out a new way of thinking about pain scales, or how, physical, the inflicted emotion can translate into the also psychological space. And thinking about that also led to a lot of kind of inquiries on the historicization of how we've came to this point of time where happiness is pursued because the way it's set up by corporations and the technologies that are constantly wanting us to be happy, versus why is it bad to be fearful? Why do we have to be fearful of the unknown? And why are certain emotions being less valued versus those that are more so? And all that kind of like political, environmental, societal construct of emotion that leads up to where we are right now has been super interesting for me. And my answer was squirrels, or subverting technology in some sort of way that it's not supposed to be used, and misusing it, and showing the failure and the gap between how so much of emotion is constructed by language, and language which is also culturally specific, and how, for me, that's what I want to challenge constantly. And being ridiculous and absurd and playful and fun, and being able to translate that through something that's more human understandable. Like, I can talk to you all and you'll understand what I'm saying, but I want to be able to show that to people who have no awareness or criticality. The moment I can convince my mom that emotional surveillance or privacy is very important, and something that we should work on, then I would have achieved what I'm doing, but what I'm trying to do. But so that's a very roundabout way of saying where I'm at in terms of emotion and how it materializes with my work, and vice versa.
Oh, thank you. Carla, you had something to say, and Clark.
It's hard to follow up. That was really fantastic. Thank you. No, it was great. And I appreciate lengthy responses. We get so used to, Twitter feeds. One thing I've been thinking about a lot lately with my project with Carla Gann, cross-platform avatar for recursive life action generative adversarial network, is thinking back to something very personal. My grandmother, Pansy May, and in her later years, she died in 2017 at 101. But you were talking about support, AIs and stuffed animals. What is the one name? The seal? Well, I can't remember the name right now. But yeah, that's right. Well, she just had a baby doll, right, in her 90s. and it's gender changed. Sometimes I was her youngest grandchild, so sometimes its name was Carla, sometimes it was Colin, her great great grandchild, and
So
that was her reality, right? And she had an emotional relationship with that baby doll. But what was more important, and where it gets back to Carla again, is she lived in a little town of 3,000 people. And when she would go out to dinner, my parents would take her out to dinner, everybody participated in her reality. That baby doll was alive to them because it was alive to her. And they would participate in that reality. And in a way, this Carla Gann project, she has her own, Zoom channel, she has her own Instagram. And it really has been about, one, she's been kind of a support to me during all of this. I'm here with my partner and my cat, but like she has been kind of a way to keep my art alive through, collaborating with her, but also in sharing her, having other people kind of collaborate and participate in that state of disbelief, and there's some kind of emotional connection and linkage for me in that.
No, thank you. And just to kind of reiterate the question, Tiare and Clark, like how are emotions kind of being mediated through, either analog and or digital technologies for you at this time, both in your curatorial and artistic practices?
Yara, you want to go? I know you're just coming back.
You can go ahead. I'll come in after.
Dorothy, I appreciate the question. And I think my thoughts on it, anticipating the conversation, I gave it some thought. And I think Carla's remark about the baby doll is actually kind of particularly apropos. I know you're asking about emotional materiality in the context of, I need to start this, excuse me. In the context specifically of virtual exchanges and network communications. And I understand how it is sort of uniquely a problem there. But for me, the question of emotional materiality is maybe still more fundamental. And in a way, again, I come at it, it sort of more fundamentally informs like my relationship to curating and aesthetics. How would I say that? I think it's to say that in a way, when you ask the question about emotional materiality in relationship to technology, I think it's because technology we often assume to be devoid of emotional relations. And in a way, the psychology of our relationship to technology is largely sort of impoverished. But I don't know if that's particular to our relationship to technology, that in some ways we operate with more kind of impoverished notions about emotion and materiality kind of in the first place. So in other words, that's been the focus of my thinking, is to say, what are we talking about when we talk about emotional materiality? And I take it that in some ways we're in a field of psychology. There might be some resistance to that. But then it's specifically to say, but it's got to be a robust psychology that's psychodynamic and understands us, understands emotion and maybe even more fundamentally affect as integral to our experience and our relationship to objects and other people and in our self-understanding, right? And so that then what's the materiality? I would take it, it's those sort of bonds, the way in which we find ourselves situated in the world, sort of held in place by affective ties and compulsions. For me, also, an aspect of the materiality of emotion is the conflict that it entails. In other words, I take emotions and affect always to be excessive and to be polyvalent and in some cases sort of self-defeating, to always be a site of, of tension, right, in our relationship to ourselves and other people, the world again. So for me, in a way, it's considerations of emotional materiality, like I said, that kind of lead me to curating in the first place. In some ways, I think that art practice, cultural production, is a kind of civic space for, well, dialogue, right? And I come at art essentially discursively, critically, and in a dialogue. But what's unique to the conversation that we have about art is it's one that speaks to our pleasures, to our enjoyments, right? That it is affective. It's a conversation that we're having about our responses, and that we're unpacking our feelings essentially, right? And I think that again is kind of an essential kind of civic work that by and large is overlooked or disavowed as kind of a real concern. Technology again has some more considerations, but I'll bow out for now.
Yare.
Yeah. I mean, something that really hit me was when you were saying, Dorothy, that in a conversation, someone was saying that you can't make anything magical with technology. I mean, I just came back. I was offline. I came back. I look different now. I mean, I feel like technology, this kind of disconnect between thinking of technology as not a part of nature. You know, it's an extension of nature. It's an extension of the organic. At the core of it, it's all these earth minerals, right? Reconfigured, transmutated into these devices that we have and we conjure with. We conjure these conversations with. We conjure artworks with. And there's something inherently magical to what we can conjure, to pressing a button and having it like send these energetic pathways of thought or of pixels, like, you know, to through fiber optics, you know, across oceans. I mean, how is that not magical? It just blows my mind, kind of like these ways that we or the disconnect that we have. I really just have felt that I've been honestly able to connect deeper to my technology. As I was saying, I've been connecting deeper to the environment, and that I've, in a way, in this kind of like psychic way and a metaphysical way, been like able to like feel myself within the pixels. Especially, I have to emote through these liquid crystal polymer displays and all of this circuitry that's very much alive to me, you know, that's very much emotional to me. So it's just, I don't know, just a lot that
I love this. I love this so much. Keep going, Tiare. Sorry, before I delve into that next burning question.
I feel like I've never felt more connected to my technology now, and felt like you know, as kind of like Donna Haraway and Eric Davis has said, and Marshall McLuhan, like we've always been cyborgs from the beginning. And I feel like even as we are isolating in a way, we're like becoming our truer selves during this time. We're becoming closer to maybe, I don't know. We're evolving together. I feel like also the global consciousness is shifting in this way as we're communicating in all these different time zones, but at the same time, our relationship to temporality is changing. And this is all through kind of emotional materiality, as you said, and the metaphysics of it. So we can just keep going. We can keep riffing off that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, so let me just riff off of that. I mean, I don't know, because selfish. Oh my God, I don't know which one is my freaking favorite so far. Hello. I will. So let me say this, speaking to this whimsy. It's funny because my next question, or something that I selfishly wanted to address, was actually to go back to what Laura was talking about regarding, and Laura, please correct me if I'm wrong, but you brought up emotional surveillance. And I do actually have a very specific question about that. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. So my question, or like my concern, And I think this is one of the ways that I feel, that I guess I'm asking this selfishly because um, one of my research topics or subtopics, should I say, is Beth Semmel is a scholar and a writer who does like computational psychiatry. So she's actually been studying how there are engineers, um, you know, uh, creating platforms that can detect aberrations in speech. So basically, and it's like, I mean, this is so beta. This is like research material. This is not going to be a product anytime soon. Um, but it is a type of emotional surveillance that I think people think is impossible, but people are actually looking at right now. That is that there are people that are trying to actually catalog, voice and create voice recognition that actually can detect whether you're having like a manic episode. So if we think about this type of emotional surveillance, and that is actually closer to us than we think. In what magical ways then, as Tiara was alluding to, because we are all very much connected and tethered to one another, whether we like to or not. I mean, you just look someone up, on the internet, and there you go, boom, right? And I'm also reading the wonderful Joanne McNeil's book Lurking right now. But it's kind of making me think of that, what Laura you brought up, but also how is that possible? Like all four of you, please, like I would love to hear what you think about how would we actually think about emotional surveillance, because those two words just seem so you know they're not juxtaposed, but they, to some extent they are. um but how can artists such as yourselves start to like untangle some of that? Like how could we just, oh god, let me use a different word than disrupt, interfere, and maybe cause confusion, obfuscation, any way, shape or form.